So, episode 93 of Dragon Ball Super is taking us right where episode 92 left us off. We get the second female Super Saiyan in Kale, and at the same time we find out that there are some people who are trying to stop Frieza from coming back from the afterlife to join Universe 7. But to dive more into this episode, alrighty guys, it is Quaman here today giving you my good and bad breakdown of episode 93. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video. So the first thing that I liked about this episode is that it revitalized the whole concept of the whole purification system in Dragon Ball. And this was shown a lot in Dragon Ball Z Movie 12, also known as Fusion Reborn, where we see that that teenage demon was guarding the spirit cleansing machine. And the way this machine works is that it takes evil spirits and cleanses them so that when they're purified, they'll go back into the Dragon Ball world once again with a better spirit, and they start over again once they're pretty much reincarnated. But the case with Frieza is that Frieza does not want to repent. He does not want to give in to, the afterlife, and the way Dragon Ball Super's kind of changing it is that Frieza in his cocoon and with all those teddy bears and fairies coming to him, they're trying to make Frieza change his ways, and he doesn't want to give into it, which is what pisses King Yama off. And I really like that they kind of revitalized this concept, and I'm really curious to see how they will actually completely classify the way this system works in Super, whereas this has kind of been loose throughout the series before. But the other thing that I wanted to bring up though, guys, is Goku going to hell. Now this is definitely one of the highlights of this episode, and I think the dialogue between Goku and Frieza was very strong. The reason why is it was kind of a mano alpha male conversation where both guys want to get something out of this. So Goku wants to get a really strong guy to fight for his team. Frieza wants Goku to help him come back to life once again, and obviously both have their goals. And the really interesting thing about this is how Goku wasn't giving in and kind of played the alpha dog role, where he made Frieza feel less important than what Goku could have been to Frieza, where Frieza's like, okay, what if I don't want to join your team? And Goku's like, alright, I'll just leave then. And I really like that because it's like Goku's kind of playing hardball with Frieza, and you immediately see Frieza jumping to it. And I also love how Frieza's teasing him about how strong he is and how he can get stronger. And Goku acknowledges this and talks to Frieza about saying how the winner of the tournament, the top fighter, is going to have a chance to use the Super Dragon Balls. But then Frieza plays smart ball. He's like, alright, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to win this. And how he wants them to use the Earth Dragon Balls to bring him back. The interesting thing about this is that Frieza is not aware of the Earth Dragon Ball rules, that once you've been brought back with the Dragon Balls before, you can't be brought back again. And since the Pilaf gang, along with, obviously Togoma and Sorbet, brought Frieza back, Frieza can't come back with the Earth Dragon Balls again. So this is kind of a tricky rule coming up into this. And obviously the Namekians would not allow Frieza to be wished back. So in essence, Goku has complete control over this. He can use Frieza to help them fight, and Frieza can stay dead. And also, another thing I loved about the scene is Frieza asking if he could kill opponents, similar to what Frost has been doing with using his poison needles and cheating. It's like you can't expect these Frieza race characters to really follow the rules, and I loved how they added that into there. And one more thing I wanted to say about this particular scene is I love how the colors were so light and bright when Goku went over to talk to Frieza. But later on in the conversation, you see the atmosphere becomes purplish and blue. It has a very eerie feel to it, and I really like that because that really personifies hell. So it's like a friendly hell going into a more dark hell, and that's another thing I really liked about that. Now, one interesting thing I loved about this episode is that there was a scene where the Pilaf gang theme song in Dragon Ball Super played while we see Cabba, Kale, and Caulifla all together. And this is the scene where Caulifla and Cabba are trying to get Kale to turn into a Super Saiyan. And the reason why I feel that song is so fitting for that moment is there are 3 members of the Pilaf gang, just like there are 3 members of this Universe 6 Saiyans team, as we have Caulifla, Kale, and Cabba, and the personalities are kind of similar in the sense where Caulifla is kind of like Pilaf, the de facto alpha leader of the group, who's loud and brash. Then you have Cabba, who's a lot like Shu, who's very intimidated a lot by Pilaf, in this case Caulifla. And last but not least, we have Kale, who's a lot like Mai, who's the most reserved character of the group, and I just felt that that song was very interesting to being played in that particular scene. One thing I really loved about this episode, guys, is the whole female Broly battle sequence. So Kale became the legendary Super Saiyan, or at least it appears to be the legendary Super Saiyan in Dragon Ball Super. And the really interesting thing about this episode, guys, is that because Kale is a friend of Cabba and Caulifla, they can't necessarily just take her down. Because Broly was a villain, you can just get rid of him, but they kind of need her for the Tournament of Power. So that created a sense of tension that I really enjoyed. And I really also like the fact that Kale had a very similar moveset to Broly, where you see like her powering up her energy blast, and you know, you can see it like, you know, changing colors, and her having that one particular line where she says, "My energy is overflowing," just like what Broly said in the Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan movie. And the one thing that made me geek out, guys, as I said in my live reaction, was when she pointed her finger out at Cabba and she's like, "You Cabba," and that was like directly going back to the first Broly movie where he's like, "You Kakarot, I choose you to be the first of my victims." And seeing this and how Caulifla was so excited to fight, but at the same time she kind of wanted her friend to be safe and okay, it was just a weird tension scene while also making it, you know, nostalgic and just bringing so much action and brutality to the moment of Dragon Ball Super, and I loved it. It was awesome. But guys, I gotta make this a fair breakdown and talk about the bad elements of this episode, and I really didn't like the whole thing of the God of Destruction of Universe 4 and Quitela spying. And the reason why is because I feel like this is slowing down the plot way too much. And the reason why is if his spy is finding out information about Universe 7 and then bringing back, I already know that the plot wants Frieza to fight in the Tournament of Power. It's just making pointless time to stall for the Tournament of Power, and I just honestly don't like it, and it feels like it's gonna be pointless. Also, guys, another thing I didn't like is the fact that in the battle sequence against legendary Super Saiyan Kale, Caulifla appears to have turned into a Super Saiyan 2 where you see the electricity sparkling. So a Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla just makes it seem like, so you can literally just turn Super Saiyan 2 with literally no experience in doing this. Like, it made the form look like a joke. And it just kind of gets rid of all the hard work that we've seen previous characters go through into attaining these forms that these characters are just doing. With Kale, you can give an exception because obviously she's gifted with those powers the same way Broly was, but with Caulifla, it's just weird how much of a prodigy she is to just turn Super Saiyan 2 that easily. And last but not least, guys, one scene that I felt that was out of place and also unnecessary for the episode is Goku giving Baba the Zeno button as like a token of appreciation for her bringing Frieza back. And the reason why is because I said to myself, what the hell is Baba gonna do with the Zeno button? Like, I couldn't possibly think of a way that this could have added to the series, and it just felt like a scene that was completely out of place and not necessary. But ultimately, guys, to talk more about my discussion point in this episode today, where I ask you guys a question. What version of hell do you guys prefer in the Dragon Ball series? Do you guys prefer the hell where we see all of these villains with their bodies just walking around in the afterlife causing trouble, as we saw in the Otherworld Tournament or when Goku was fighting against Kid Buu? Or do you like this modified version of hell where we see Frieza in a cocoon and them trying to really purify the really evil villains of the past? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, guys. Personally, I like the old version, as you can kind of see like these villains teaming up as we saw in a lot of the filler episodes of Dragon Ball, but let me know which one version of hell that you guys prefer. So to talk more about the preview, as I mentioned before, Sidra and Quitela have a problem, as we've been seeing with some of the spoilers that have been coming out lately, of Frieza coming back from the afterlife and him giving Universe 7 an edge, and they clearly want to make their universes have the absolute best edge possible, which is why they would clearly be teaming up to try and stop this. The next thing we see is Goten, Trunks, and Marin being around each other, and it looks like they're waving, so this is clearly showing that Goten and Trunks are obviously going to defend the island that Android 17 defends all of the animals from the poachers. The other thing I noticed is that we see some last minute training with Master Roshi, and this actually really hypes me up a lot, because it seems like Master Roshi's definitely going to be doing something interesting in this Tournament of Power, which is what I've been hoping for, and this is definitely going to add a much more balanced feel for the Universe 7, as weaker characters can have more to do with the fights themselves. And last but not least, we see Goku saying in the preview, "Stop, Frieza, what is this warm-up?" And because the episode is called The Mysterious Assassins, we can pretty much come to a conclusion that Sidra and Quitela are going to be planning assassins to go after Frieza, or some form to try and stop Frieza, and Frieza is going to experiment with his power. So those are the things that I really got out of the preview going into episode 94, and it feels like it's going to be another filler episode, but hey, I mean, they're really hyping this tournament up, so we're just going to have to wait. So overall, guys, I would have to say that this was a borderline 4-star episode. The animation wasn't the best, but the action sequences were very entertaining, even though the animation didn't look very good. And watching female Broly in Kale was just such a great throwback to all of the days where you would put in your VHS tapes and watch Goku and his friends taking on Broly. And the only two things that really kept the episode up, in my opinion, would have to be obviously the Broly sequence, and also seeing the whole Frieza Goku dialogue, as I really felt that whole, you know, picking and choosing which one was more dominant in the situation in terms of talking was really cool for Dragon Ball. It was a whole alpha male clash of who wants what and why. And everything else in the episode was kind of weak and felt out of place, but those two elements really kept the episode up, and that's why I generally enjoyed it. So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys, and let me know what you think about episode 93 of Dragon Ball Super, and I really look forward to hearing your thoughts.